Brechin City 6, Forest Mechanics 1. A big win for the champions then.
It was in the end. They did what they had to do and they sort of pushed on a bit in the second half once they'd sort of secured the victory to try and boost the goal difference, because as I'm sure we'll touch on throughout the discussion this week, it looks like goal difference could be very important. I felt the overall scoreline was a bit harsh on Forest for what they put into the game. I thought for half an hour, and Steve McDonald said it in his interview and I agreed with him, that for half an hour I thought Forest were excellent. They limited Brechin to very little and they caused problems on the counter-attack. Sam Gordon scored a good goal, tidy finish. But where things kind of turned a wee bit, you had Callum Frame, who was playing as Forest as lone striker, and he, with his pace and his sort of size, he was giving them an out ball and was causing a few problems. He went off with quite a bad looking injury just sort of around about the half-hour mark. And after that, I mean, young Kieran Haler came on, put himself about, did well, but against the sort of calibre of defender he was up against, it was a tough ask. And after that, it was harder for the Can-Cans to get out and ask the same questions, and that was when Brechin sort of took a bit more of a grip of the game. Another thing which I think Brechin were quite good at on Saturday was once they got one, the goals sort of came in clusters. Once they got one, they sort of found a way to go and get another quickly and really sort of push on. And I mean, it was obviously a good win for them, but with the way it panned out elsewhere, they haven't really, with Buckie, they haven't really, made anything up in terms of goal difference. At one point it looked like they might, but unfortunately for them that didn't happen, but it keeps it bubbling away nicely.
We'll come to Buckie in a minute, but it does look as if we may have a title decided on goal difference the way this is going.
Well, it does. It's just, I mean, obviously slip-ups happen, and at this stage of the season there's no guarantees, but it's like, I'll probably touch on it a wee bit more later, but it's like if you look at the fixtures and things like that, there is a potential, I think, now for next Saturday, Buckie and Brechin will be sitting on the same points, and it'll be, well, who's in front or who can rack up the goals on the day. So I mean, it's a great finish to the season, and Fraserburgh are still obviously needing slip-ups, but they're still in with a shout and in mathematical contention as well. So it's, from what's been a pretty crazy season, it looks like having quite a fitting conclusion. I was just going to say the other thing on Forest while we're speaking about this game as well, and it's like, talk about them being down to the bare bones, and it's like you look at the list of players that were missing on Saturday, and it's Lee Fraser, Andrew Skinner, Jack Grant, Sean Morrison, Ben Kelly, plus Cameron Ferguson, Jack Walker, and it's like quite a few of them potentially might have played if they'd been available, but even just in terms of coming off the bench and being able to try and change a game, not having those guys available is a big loss. Whereas you flip it and look at Gavin Price's squad, and like Anthony McDonald, first action I think he's had all season because injury comes on and it's his free kick, it's knocked in for the 6th goal, and they've got a full bench and like good players like Murray McIntosh and players like that you're able to bring on, and there's no question it is an advantage.
Buckie Thistle 6, Deveronvale 1. No repeat of the goalless draw when the sides last met a couple of weeks ago, but Graham Stewart will be very happy with this one. Definitely.
I mean, I think you wonder as well, with all the chat about goal difference, those couple of goals and stoppage time for Max Barry and Jack McKeever, if they could prove to be important in the end up. I mean, you look at I'll come back to sort of what happened in the game, but you look at the situation, Buckie, they're 9 behind on goal difference, 3 points behind Brechin, but they do have the game in hand, which is Monday night against Strathspey, and it's like they play Strathspey home and away Monday, Wednesday, in between Brechin play Keith at Kynoch Park on Tuesday night, and then Saturday Buckie are at home at Keith, Brechin are away to Brora. So it's like, is there the scope for Buckie to potentially make up the 9 in goal difference this week? We're having the 2 games Monday, Wednesday. I think there is. So I think it's set up. I think come Saturday it could be very close in terms of just a goal in it either way, which, to doesn't get much better than that really in terms of trying to decide a league season. If you look at the 90 minutes overall, I think I'll actually start with Vale here, because I thought, first of all, with their goal, Jack Mitchell does absolutely superbly to work a bit of space and get his cross in. Obviously, Cameron Angus finishes it, but I thought, like, Jack Mitchell, that was to sort of wriggle away for Coen Ramsey. Great bit of play. And then I think after that, for Deveronvale, for what we saw in the highlights defensively, that was a step back and not what we've seen from them recently. Like, I mean, you look at like important moments in the second goal for Buckie right on half time, the penalty, and it's Mackay and Sean McIntosh sort of, they won't want to see it back, I'm sure, managed to get themselves in a kind of right old fankle, and I think Innes, see what he's trying to do, and maybe with Buckie having the wind as well, he was thinking long, if I hook it out, long throw-ins in on top of us, so trying to like head it back to Sean. But I think sometimes, like, not sure if you say overthink it, but like sometimes I think a ball just needs to be out the park, and I think on reflection, and Deveronvale would feel that was one of those occasions. But I mean, the other side of it, you've got to give Buckie credit, because even 2-1 at half time, Buckie were playing into the wind second half, which, you know, could have been problematic, and maybe you might have expected Deveronvale to cause them a few more problems, but Buckie have gone on and won handsomely. And I mean, the pick of the goals, unquestionably, Jack McKeever's free kick, outstanding, but even shows probably the mentality a wee bit as well, in terms of, in Brechin were similar, at 3 or 4-1 up, it wasn't just a case of sort of pack the tools away, job done. They both know that
every goal
counts, so they kept at it for the full 90 plus whatever, and like Brechin, Buckie ended up scoring 6, and you know, great result for them, especially after drawing at Banff last month. And as I said, just sets us up for a great finale to the season, potentially.
There is a third team in this equation, although you'd have to say they're the outsiders at this point, to be fair, in Fraserburgh, but they're doing what they have to do, a 5-1 win up at Strathspey. Thistle, they're poised. If there is a slip-up, Scott Barber scoring 2 goals, Aidan Sapel, Logan Watt and Kieran Simpson also on the score sheet. Jack Davison getting a late consolation for the Granton Jags. It's a goal that I'm sure Joe Barber probably won't want to see again.
No, it was kind of a slight bit of lapse, that goal for a Fraserburgh point of view, and sort of, you know, handed that one to Strathspey. I think they're still, Fraserburgh played Brora at Belsley on Wednesday and then finish playing Strathspey again at home on Saturday. I think what counts against them slightly is, if you were being, Mark Cowie said it a wee bit after the game, but if you're being maybe ultra critical here, but with the opportunities Fraserburgh had during the game on Saturday, they probably should have won more convincingly, and clearly they need Brechin or Buckie to, well, either have like 2 draws or to lose a game. But if it was a case of them losing, Fraserburgh probably on chances. Ethan, take nothing away from Ethan Rain, a Strathspey goal, he had a fine game on Saturday, but some of the chances that Broch maybe passed up, they could have brought themselves closer in terms of the goal difference, which, although might have proved to be sort of forlorn anyway, if they had maybe scored another, say they hadn't conceded one and maybe scored another 3 or 4 or whatever, it would have just maybe brought that wee bit more pressure onto the other two, in terms of, you know, if we slip up, Fraserburgh right there, but they could still score the goals, and I mean, they're still there in with a chance coming into the last week of the season. So from where they were, Mark Cowie said this as well, from where they were at one point in maybe November, December time, folks saying they were finished, they've had a very strong second half of the season and come right back into contention. And I mean, at the very least, if they can win one of their last 2 games, that'll secure third. So, you know, it's been overall a good league campaign for the Broch, and they've, you know, did what they had to do, on Saturday, and you never know, they'll wait and see. I'm sure they'll try and win the last 2 and rack up the goals. In terms of Strathspey, I mean, tough finish for them. Fraserburgh home and away and at home. Either side,
Buckie
home and away. It's challenging, but I mean it's in a roundabout way. They're sort of involved in the title race almost because they could have a say on who wins it, but certainly you would have to make Buckie strong favourites to win both the games and be in a good position going into the last day. The other thing with Strathspey is we're sort of still waiting to see who the sort of permanent manager might be for next season. My understanding is that sort of Bobby Beckwith seems to be the name on most people's lips in terms of being the front runner for that position, but it's who maybe comes in to work with him or what the sort of setup is, we don't know, but he's certainly someone that's been mentioned in connection with that job.
Okay, we'll round up the other games then. Brora Rangers 1, Bankside 2. Ethan Cairns getting a last gasp winner for D up at Dudgeon Park. Tony Dingwall had put the Catacks ahead, but Gary Wood's second half penalty had made it 1-1 before Cairns' late counter won it. D are fighting to hold off Formartine for this fourth spot.
They are. I mean, they're in quite a good position now. If they can win it, Wick Academy in their last game, then the likelihood is fourth will probably be theirs. They're 3 points ahead of Formartine. Formartine do have 2 games to play compared to D's 1, but there's 13 a difference on the goal difference, which Kenneth Bankside can win their last game. It's Formartine, although we'll come on to Formartine, they were in fine scoring form at the weekend. Bankside look like they might just be on course for that fourth spot and Challenge Cup place that comes with it, which would be the first time for them being in that competition, so another sort of milestone, if you will, and a sign of progress. And to come out of that game on Saturday with a win, any time you go to Dudgeon Park and win, it's always a great result, and particularly maybe the manner of it. I mean, the wind, by all accounts, was horrendous, and it's one of those days where you have to sort of battle and maybe approach it in a slightly different way. Bankside have done that and found a way to get over the line. It was interesting with the comments from Ali MacDonald, because he felt if it had been a game where a bit more had been riding on it with the way the wind was, he thought it probably could have been abandoned, but because there was no titles or things like that being decided, it was played. He was also unhappy with the penalty award, which he felt Brora were defending quite well against the wind at 1-0 up, and then they felt the penalty change it. And the reason I think he felt so good was because he was actually involved in the incident. Joe Mallon had come out to punch it clear, and I think Ali and Lachie McLeod, I believe, of Bankside sort of been there as well, and I think Joe sort of cleaned both of them out a wee bit, but Ali felt it was one of those things where wasn't a lot in it, but penalties been given and Bankside have scored and gone on to win. But it's interesting as well, the other thing with Brora, I mean, Ali's came out Thursday that Ali's stepping down at the end of the season, but there's a couple other guys, Joe Mallon, Dale Gillespie, retiring for playing as well at the end of the season, and that was sort of all their farewells to Dudgeon Park, because the pit remedial work on the pitch is starting. So Brora's last few home games, including the weekend one against Brechin at the weekend, are being played in Golspie. So that was sort of, I think there was quite a nice moment from what I hear in the second half where Ali and Joe and Dale all sort of came off together and said their goodbyes to Dudgeon Park. And I'm sure the Brora supporters will miss them, because they've been outstanding players over the last decade or so, and sort of key parts of how successful Brora have been.
We mentioned Formartine there. They won 6-1 against Rothes at North Lodge Park. Aaron Reid scored a hat-trick, the second of which coming from the penalty spot in the first 24 minutes. The Spaysiders responded with Bruce Milne's wind-assisted 50-yard free kick.
Sounds like that was maybe goal of the game, despite all the goals Formartine scored.
And in the second half, Scott Lyle adding 2, and Graham Roger also on the target. Aaron Reid's still an Aberdeen player, of course. He's on loan at United. We don't know what the future holds for Aaron. If he is available, or either permanently or on loan, he's not going to be short of offers, I wouldn't imagine.
No, definitely not. I mean, I've maybe spoken about this before, but he's somebody now, although he's only, I think, 19, he's somebody now, because of his time at Turriff and now this loan at Formartine, he's proven himself to be a top-end Highland League player. There's no question about it. And if he is available in whatever capacity in the summertime, all your sort of top-end clubs would be going after him, I would imagine. But there probably remains this thing, and I've maybe said this before a season, but I still think he's a player who is certainly, with the age he's at as well and the improvement that's potentially still there, I certainly think he's a prospect for Scottish League. And I would imagine, I don't know, but I'd imagine if you were Aaron and potential, if he's getting advice or whatever, I think the thing is with what he's showing is at Highland League level, the Highland League will always be there and be an option for him. But I still think he's somebody that can potentially shine at a higher level. I mean, in terms of that game on Saturday, it's like Formartine lost Julian Wade in the warm-up, but no problem. Still racked up 6 goals, thoroughly impressive stuff. And I mean, it's been a funny sort of season for Formartine in a way, because it's been a good season, but they have had quite a lot of injuries at bad times to key players. Like Rhys Thomas is somebody that's at centre half especially is probably particularly important for them, and he's missed quite a lot of the season with injury. And Daniel Park, Johnny Crawford, there's been others, Kieran Adams as well, over the course of the campaign who've been out for long spells, and they've never quite had that sort of perfect run that you maybe need at times to be challenging right at the very top. But I do still think overall for them it's been another good campaign. As
for Rothes, am I right in thinking that was their last?
That's
game
them
of the
finished,
season?
And I think they might be slightly relieved as well, because it's been a campaign where it feels like nothing's really quite gone right for them. I mean, I was talking about injuries there with Formartine. Rothes have had a pretty horrendous time of it over the course of the campaign as a whole. Maybe at times been difficulty. I think even if you go back to last summer, maybe had difficulty even bringing in the players they wanted to bring in. And I think the good team that they've had, Rothes, it's maybe at that stage where it's looking for a wee bit of a rebuild and a wee bit of a transformation. And obviously Richard Hastings will try to do that in the summer. And I mean, you look at players Rothes had unavailable at the weekend. It's Michael Finnis, Fraser Robertson, Ben Johnston, Alan McKenzie, Liam Shewan, Kyle White, Gary Kirk, and all good Highland League players, and a lot of them quite experienced players as well. And it's if you took that out of any team, they would suffer.
Huntley 0, Nairn County 0 at Christie Park. The wee county finishing with 10 men after Fraser Dingwall was sent off for 2 yellows. I don't think there's an awful much more to say on that one, other than I guess the big news was Ross Stokely's last game for Nairn, and also the fact that Stephen Mackay is going to be stepping down. I'm maybe putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 here, but given there's now going to be a vacancy at Brora, could we see a potential return?
Well, I couldn't say for definite, but I think it's a pretty, if you wanting to look at options, I think it's potentially an obvious one. I mean, Stephen's been at Brora previously as a player and a manager, was a league winning manager, kind of ended quite suddenly and on quite a strange note really. They got August 2021 they got beat heavily at Fraserburgh, and then it that was it. But I think he's been there and done it, and I mean, it's one of them. I'd imagine if he fancies it, it's in both sides. I think Brora, I'm sure, won't be short of options in terms of people who might want the job, but they know that Stephen's somebody who's been there and done it and's proven, so I'd imagine that would appeal. And then if Stephen is wanting to continue in management, again, he knows the club, he's been there and done it at Brora, so you'd imagine that would probably appeal to him as well. So I'd say I'd think he'd certainly be in the discussion. it's interesting the sort of job he's done at Nairn, because he came in October 22 and he's done well, and they've been, just sort of below that top 6. They won the North of Scotland Cup this season, first trophy since 2012, which was a huge deal for them. And they beat a Thistle side in the semis and a Ross County side in the final, both of which contained 5 or 6 first team players. So they did very well to win that cup, and you could see at the end sort of how big a moment that was for Nairn County. I think maybe in terms of the reason he's leaving, or why they've sort of come to this mutual parting, is I think maybe Stephen's ambitions in terms of how he would want to move the club forward and the speed at which he would maybe like to do it maybe don't quite align with the Nairn board in terms of, I'm sure they'd like to progress as well, but maybe both parties maybe seeing it slightly, the journey to keep improving, maybe see it slightly differently, and in terms of time frames as well. But I think there's no question, if you look over the 18 months or so, it's been a good time for Nairn County in terms of everything I've spoken about. It's also been a good time for Stephen in terms of coming back into management and sort of doing quite well and showing himself. And I mean, you talk about the other departure for Nairn on Saturday, Ross Stokely. I mean, he's somebody, again, came into Nairn with Stevens, made a huge difference there in terms of his presence and everything in defence. And also, I mean, brings down the curtain on just an incredible playing career from sort of for all levels, really, starting in the Highland League with Huntley to going right up through the divisions with Calais, Thistle, and 600 games, whatever he had, Ross County, back to the Highland League and having success as a player and a manager with Brora. And then before he came to Nairn, he was even playing in the North Caledonian League, and then he's come back and won something with Nairn. In terms of North football and a contribution as a player over basically a 30-year period, it's kind of almost unmatched in a way. You'd be hard pressed to find anyone with a sort of CV of Ross Stokely just in terms of what he's done as a player. And I mean, remarkable. Even this season, he's hardly missed a game. Just in terms of fitness and commitment and doing everything you need to do to play at the level. A great example he's set. And I suppose last we better actually touch on Saturday's game, because despite the 0-0, having seen highlights of this, I thought again in breezy conditions it was quite a good watch. Huntley maybe shaded it on chances, they've hit the woodwork a couple of times, and Robbie Foster missed what could only be described as an absolute sitter in the second half. But Nairn also, Nairn had quite a strong penalty claim, I believe, and a couple of decent chances as well. 0-0, avoiding defeat anyway probably suits Huntley, because Brora with their games in hand should end up finishing 6th, so that kind of leaves Huntley. They've finished ahead of Nairn, and now they're 6 points in front of Turriff, and I think 5 better on goal difference. So Huntley are in that pole position at the moment to finish in 7th, which would be a good season for them. I think they're 9 points better off than last season, so pretty positive overall. The last thing I was going to say just on that was Fraser Dingwall sending off. Second booking for, I think it was re-entering the field of play before the referee had given him permission. I know there's rules and this and that, but at the last 2 minutes of the season as well, it feels quite a sort of petty and unnecessary sending off, but there we are.
Okay. Inverurie Locos 1, Clach 0. Jay Halliday getting the only goal of the game at Harlaw Park. Interesting post-match comments in this one. Dean Donaldson was looking for his players to be angrier in front of goal, but he's, on the whole, he should be pleased with what he's had over the course of the campaign since coming in.
Aye, well, I think I was going to say he should even be pleased over the course of the week, because he played Clach at Grant Street Wednesday, played them at home Saturday, and they've taken 6 points. So it's always quite tricky when you get a double header like that. So I don't think you can really complain too much. I do think it's that thing, Locos, in terms of if they look to next season, it's probably just what he was saying in terms of scoring 1 or 2 more goals maybe, because even some of the games you look recently, like Deveronvale defeat, they were 1-0 up, got beat 2-1, draw at Buckie, they were 1-0 up, got pegged back. He's maybe thinking like to move forward as he would like, you need to, when you're on top, maybe take more own advantage. I mean, Conor Gethin said some interesting comments as well.
He didn't miss.
I just think he feels, and I can understand where he's coming from, he feels sometimes in maybe games like that, away from home to Inverurie, that it's just like, not accepted, but like, oh, can Clach turn up and we've been beat, so be it. I think he wants maybe a bit more like his squad to be less accepting of that, and maybe to change the sort of
the mentality.
The mentality or the attitude a wee bit, and he feels like maybe they're just. It's like we've spoken about this before, but they blow hot and cold, Clach. Like it's not long ago they're beating Banks a D and doing what Connor was looking for, but then in other games they maybe fall below that. But he seems to have, from what I hear, quite a few players lined up to come in the summer. So if it's a sort of maybe slightly different squad that Clach have got next season, it'll be interesting to see how they get on.
Wick Academy 2, Keith 0. The goals coming in the second half in this one, Gordon McNabb and Mark McGregor. Again, it sounds like the conditions might have been the real winner in this one, according to both managers. Gary Manson saying he would have asked for his money back if he'd paid paid to watch. Typical Gary Manson kind of comment, I think, while Craig Reid was bemoaning the fact his side didn't make the most of when the conditions were in their favour.
Craig Ewan, you mean? I'm sure. Sorry. I'm sure Craig Reid would have been as well. But
yes.
But no, I thought it was pretty honest stuff as you usually get from both managers there. I mean, it's one of those things. Again, Keith, I think, had the wind first half, and it's like, even though I think it died away a wee bit second half, it's like if you don't make advantage of it, you're sometimes left like thinking, what if? I mean, even it's an unrelated note, it's a bit like you go back to last week with that Fraserburgh Brechin game in really windy conditions, like Mark Cowie. He says afterwards, if you don't win the half when you're playing with it, you're up against it, and maybe that's, that sentiment's, come to pass a wee bit on Saturday. I think it's interesting as well, both managers kind of hinted that they couldn't really see their team winning it, but credit to Wick, because they found a way. Gordy McNabb and Mark McGregor, two pretty important players going forward for the Scories, and have found, I know like they lost at Formartine on Wednesday but played well for a spell and things. They have sort of found a real momentum in the second half of the season. Wick, like they've picked up quite a lot of points. They're on 32 points now, which is 6 points better off than last season. I think they've still got 4 games to play. So from you go back to a year ago and even the start of this season where it was maybe a bit doom and gloom for Academy, suddenly it feels like the last few months there's a lot of good stuff being done at Harmsworth Park.
We'll have to touch on it. It's because they're involved as well. It's a big week ahead for the Maroons in terms of what's going to happen at the top of the table.
Aye, well, similarly, like I said with Strathspey, I don't think Keith particularly looking forward to it in the sense of they're going to have 2 games where, in all likelihood, Brechin will be coming up and looking to try and score as many goals as possible. Buckie then at Victoria Park on the Saturday in forefront of what I'd imagine would be a big crowd if Buckie have a chance of winning the league. But again, potentially looking to rack up the goals to win the league. So tough week for the Maroons, but they are capable of causing both those teams problems. We've seen how sort of dogged, resilient and sort of, maybe this doesn't sound very complimentary, but sturdy almost, like they're well set up and make it difficult for teams. And I think if Keith play at their best, neither Brechin or Buckie will find it easy against them, but clearly it's that thing with both these clubs going for the league. They'll be looking to go and seal the deal, basically.
One last game, Lossiemouth 0, Turriff United 0 at Grant Park. Warren Cummins' side need 2 wins in their last 2 games to move any higher than 9th. They were 12th last season, but they're well past their points tally, which was 36 a year ago. It's been another season of progress for them.
It has been. It's maybe it's maybe tailed off slightly. I think like they've kind of had good runs and bad runs maybe at times this season. Turriff, like they had a very good start when Dean Donaldson was still there. Warren came in, maybe took a couple of weeks to get used to what he was wanting. Then they've had good spells. Maybe recently haven't quite, like they've played Lossie twice and drawn 0-0, and that's maybe 2 games they'd feel they could have won, but 48 points, that's 12 better than last season. They're guaranteed to finish at least 9th, be in the top half, which, it's the first time for quite a few years they'll have been in the top half. So, on the whole, a good season. I mean, the same for Lossie, really. It's like, you look at them, they've got Clach away as their last game. They're 2 points better off than last term. They've, had another solid campaign. I don't think you could complain too much. And again, you speak about injuries, and I think everyone at Grant Park would say Lossie's issue is they don't score enough goals. And it's like, you look at the way it's gone for them. It's like Bailey Campbell's missed the whole season. Ross Elliott's missed the whole season. They haven't had much luck on that front, really. So I think it'd be interesting to see maybe with a few players back potentially for Lossie next season, how they get on.
So, after quite the weekend in the Brechin Highland League, let's take a look at the league table.